Welcome back to the Band Guide, where we use GarageBand to create professional sounding music. I'm your band guy, Colin, and today I want to talk to you about maybe the most missed step in the recording process, especially by beginners. This step is crucial if you want to create professional sounding music. It's called editing, and editing is a lot of things, but the way I like to think of it broadly is just removing any distractions for the listener, anything that might take them out of just enjoying the music, just enjoying the mix that you've created. And there's a lot of things that this could be. It could be things as simple as, let's say, just trimming up anything before where you actually start playing, any potential noise that might be happening there. That's a form of editing. But maybe the most impactful form of editing is time aligning. Just getting everything to happen right where it should be happening. This isn't making it perfect. We're not talking about a world of perfect, but getting it where it should be happening. And this is crucial and makes an enormous difference. So, for example, let's say you have a drummer track that you're starting with. You have a great drummer track. It's right on beat because no matter what, that's the best drummer in the world in terms of timing. He's always right on beat. And then you record a bass track to it, and it's just a little bit behind that drummer track. And then you add a guitar track on top of that, it's just a little bit ahead, and then another guitar track that's a little bit off in its own way, and then you add a lead guitar track that's a little bit off, and then you add a vocal track. And none of them are majorly off, but they're all just a little bit off, and they're a little bit off in their own way. So it's not that just the entire band is rushing the beat a little bit. That's not a problem. The problem is when everything is just a little bit off from each other. So we need to fix those. And the amazing thing with modern technology is that you can do it very, very easily. This has been around as long as music has been recorded. They used to do it with tape where they'd cut tape and shift it a little bit so it happens where it should be happening in the context of the recording. But now in GarageBand, we can do this so easily. And in addition to that cut and shift style of editing, which is very powerful, and we're going to talk about that in next week's video, they also have a super cool, even more advanced tool called FlexTime. Now, FlexTime, if you go to the editor window, hit E to bring up the editor window, is right here. You can enable FlexTime. If it's not on already, you can also enable it by clicking this little indicator here, and now FlexTime is on. So if you now turn this off, FlexTime is still on. You're just no longer seeing it on the editor window. So before we get into that, that's important to know. If you want it all the way off, you have to turn it back off here. But let's go ahead and leave it off, and let's listen to this bass part just with a set of drums. Now this is a GarageBand drummer track that I used my Make GarageBand Drums Sound Real approach to make sound real, and then a bass track along with it. And listen to how this bass track is sometimes right on beat, but often falling just behind the beat. And notice how it's rarely exactly where it should be. So you can see near the end there, he kind of falls right on beat. But in this early part, he's just slightly behind it. He's just getting the rhythm, right? That's completely natural. This is not about saying you're a bad musician or anything. This is very, very natural to start out being just behind the beat or just ahead of the beat and then falling into the rhythm. But we need to get it right where it should be in order for this to sound as good as possible. So we're going to flip on FlexTime. And you can see I've already done a lot of FlexTime through the rest of the song. But let's just start with this intro, and let's get this intro where we want it to be. So listening back to it one more time. He's falling just a little bit behind the beat. So we're just going to use our FlexTime markers here. We click, and what it does is it creates 3 markers. One right on the beat, one at the beginning. You can't quite see it there, but one at the beginning, and one right after. And what that allows us to do is drag and shift this. If you look our waveform here, that note is now moved. It's amazing, but it's not impacting any of the other notes. So we're just going to drag that right on beat, and now that first note will come in right on beat. But you can see his second note is just a little bit behind too, his third note a little bit behind, and he's just consistently a little bit behind in this section. So a pro tip, it goes along with a lot of my tips, is do as little as you can, but as much as you need to. So if you have to put in a flex marker at every one of these to get it where it needs to be, do that. But if you want to try doing a little bit less, it's both going to be faster, but it also will sound a little bit more natural, is as opposed to doing one on every single beat. We'll go and leave these, but let's go to where we see that he's starting to play in time. So he's always a little bit behind through here. Around there he's still behind, but it looks like right around here he's really starting to be really on beat. So let's pull this up. We'll leave this where it is because that's pretty in time. That's really in time. So we're not going to mess with that. We'll go and turn off this flex point. And what's going to happen is when you turn off the flex point before, so again, we put on this flex point and shifted this. And when I turn off this flex point, it's going to shift everything before it in line with this one, back all the way up to our first flex point that was over here. So what we've now functionally done is shifted everything a little bit closer to that starting part, but you can see it's still a little bit behind. So let's maybe pick a middle point to do something similar. Let's grab this point here and drag it close, turn that off, turn this off, and now look, almost perfectly in time, almost perfectly in time, almost perfectly in time, almost perfectly in time. So what I'm going to do is tighten these up a little bit more, the ones that I think still needed a little bit. You can see that's a little bit late. I'll turn this off. Now those are really in. This one looks really good. This one is okay. I'm okay with that amount of variation, right? But now everything is really pretty in time. We could shift this one up just a little bit. And then here's a great example. One thing to note is that flex points can be a little bit off. So if we look here, the start of this note, this note trails off, and then this smaller area is where it's starting. So this is actually the start of that note right there. That would be where we'd want that flex marker. So it's important to know that. But for the most part, it gets them pretty spot on. But now listen to this bass part. That did not take us very long. We just got everything in this intro in time. And listen to how perfectly in time this bass part is now. Let's listen to that in the context of the mix. Pretty amazing, right? So that bass part is now perfectly locked into those drums. These guitars are really in time. And everything is fitting together. Everything is working together to support each other and support the song and remove any distractions for the listener. Now, there's three things that I want to stress to you about using flex time. The first is that in this case, we're going to the grid because the GarageBand drummer is perfectly in line with the grid. We can see exactly where every note is, every beat is. But sometimes that's not going to be the best approach. Let's say you've recorded an acoustic guitar and an electric bass, and they are both being recorded to a metronome, but your acoustic guitar is pretty well in time, but it's not perfect in time with the metronome. But the bass guitar is a little bit out of time with the acoustic guitar. Well, if your acoustic guitar is sounding good enough, it's rhythmically in time with itself, as opposed to going everything to the grid, you could also just time align that bass guitar to the acoustic guitar. You can see where big strikes are. If you look at the waveform here, you can look at where the big hits are, the strums are in the acoustic, and you could use that as your reference point as opposed to the actual grid. It's a little bit more involved, but it will help be a little bit more natural. Again, this is about making it fit where it should in the context of your mix, not necessarily making it robotic. The second thing that I want to stress is that flex time is great, but it's not great on every single source. So for example, I love it on bass guitar. I really like it on percussion. It's usually really good on tambourines and shakers and things like that. It sometimes works really well on vocals, but it doesn't work very well on really complex audio. So for example, acoustic guitar strums don't do super well with flex time. They can if it's a very small shift, but it's a form of what's called time compression expansion. We are using a built-in algorithm in our computer to shift things and compress them and expand them. And sometimes that makes things sound a little bit weird. So we need to be aware of that so we don't accidentally mess things up. Sometimes, especially on guitars, the better thing to use is actually destructive editing. And we're going to talk about that in next week's video, so be sure to check that out. And then the third and final thing that I want to express upon you is that editing is crucial, but it's still not mixing. If you want your song to sound as good as possible, you have to spend time recording it, making sure that it sounds great in the recording stage, spend time editing it, making sure that everything is in tune and in time, and then you need to mix it. And I want to give you something to help with the mixing process. I've put together a completely free 6-step checklist that walks through the 6 steps that all professional mixes have and how you can do them inside GarageBand completely free. There's a link in the description below where you can go grab that. And this will really help you just get a more professional sounding mix inside GarageBand completely free with what you already have. So be sure to grab that from the link in the description below. Before we go, I always want to hear from you. This week I want to know, do you use FlexTime? What do you like to use it on? Let me know in the comments below. If this video is helpful, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you next week with another video.
One thing